Welcome back to another episode of Tech Break by Friday. This is the
In this show, we discuss everything about AI tech in the intersection of business.
Our next guest is Ritesh Patel. He has spent over 25 years producing festivals and events, but most recently he co-founded TicketFairy, where he's been building an AI native SaaS platform for event and festival producers. He says that they are handling everything from ticketing to marketing automation to anti-scraping, using some of the wild tech out there to improve the experience of you organizing an event and festival. If you actually want to learn how they do that,
Stay tuned.
Hi, I'm Ritesh. I'm co-founder of TicketFairy. I guess the inception of the company was having produced events for 10 years, several hundred events, but also building tech in parallel. Like, I guess my own products and then working in various tech companies. We realized there was a gap in, I guess, the ability to generate revenue for event producers of all scales. So not just small events, but big events of tens of thousands of people. And we decided that instead of building what most people would build, which is another ticketing platform that typically is only kind of very transactional, we'd build a revenue generating stack to actually, I guess, productize best practices for making money that maybe a creative event producer wouldn't necessarily know how to do or have the in-house resources and budgets and salaries to be able to execute in the right way. And so we kind of launched over 10 years ago, have built a very kind of, I guess, complex enterprise stack of software. And the AI side of things is more recent in the last few years. And that's the topic of the conversation today.
yeah, for sure. Also, I wanted to ask a little bit randomly, since you said that for maybe smaller creators or producers that they don't have experience, but have you maybe seen that larger producers or people that they have used another software before, they use your software because it's like it's helpful for them, like because they don't need to think about it since it's designed
Yeah,
for beginners.
yeah, definitely. So I guess like just to reframe, like we maybe are not the best software for beginner event producers, but
Ah,
like
okay.
you have people that are experienced, but they still only do small events of maybe 100, 200, 300 people. We can still provide a really good stack for those people. Like I guess like the biggest thing is producing events itself is a skill in terms of like booking talent, the production of the event, the marketing. Like we want you to know how to do that before you start using the technology. Like it's not like I
Ah,
don't want to teach you how to produce events, but can we then bring in our tech to like unlock margin you didn't know you could unlock, increase conversion rates on your marketing, consolidate all your tools into one, provide like meaningful revenue uplifts? We can do that.
more we
I
would
don't think.
say like if you are someone who is still producing events, maybe 50, 100 people, like university events as well. I had been into these when I was in campus universities, for example, and it was a huge thing to actually organize something like this. So maybe
Mm.
someone who has the skills that produces this sort of events and they want to have, let's say, a tool that would be really useful for them to unlock a new level into their productivity,
Yeah,
as we would say.
exactly, exactly. I kind
Yeah.
of see us as like a growth and revenue platform, but also a way to kind of like, I guess, harness elements of your audience, for example, that you didn't know you could. Like we have incentives for sharing an event that you're attending, and that generates a lot of word of mouth and increased revenue. Or maybe you're running your guest list manually on spreadsheets or clipboards, and like you want to consolidate like that process into one. Or maybe like you don't know how to track the conversions for your ads, and we want to give you like very accurate funnel tracking and being able to gauge your ROI on any paid spend you're doing. And it's like it's all the things you don't know that in addition to the event production. It's more on like the digital side, the tech side, the CRM, the optimization, where like you actually could be making a lot more revenue, but you don't realize you can.
This comes with the experience, of course, that you had and you founded this company and other producers that they are in the space for such a long time, I would say,
Exactly,
right?
exactly. You learn those techniques over time. In the same way you have like direct to consumer brands where they're using Shopify, and Shopify has a very specific set of tools for those types of stores. We kind of come in and go, well, there are different techniques for events, but some of the techniques are the same, like, making landing pages, like conversion tracking. There's a lot of stuff that event producers inherently don't know how to do because they're primarily creative people, not digital marketers or tech people.
To me, you're just bringing an extra tool that someone didn't know they needed. But with
Yeah.
you, like they find also this revenue gap, and then they're just like, okay, now it makes sense why I use this tool.
Yeah, and I think
So
that the thing with most
yeah.
producers is that they're very small teams, right? Like they're one
Mhm.
person, two person, very small teams. And most of the time, even if you're professionally producing concerts and gigs, you're probably doing a day job as well. And this is your passion, and it's not a
Sure.
business full time yet.
Sure. Yeah, makes sense. You have lived on both sides, as we would say, as a festival founder and as the CEO of an SaaS ticketing platform. Now it has also AI infused into it. So, what's one painful problem that you kept running at these events and you finally said, okay, like these 10 years back, I want to build a tool for this myself?
I started producing events in 2000 and took 10 years off when starting this company. And then about 3 years ago, found an opportunity to create a music festival in Mexico, a multi-day destination festival for both the ticket buyers and also the artists being flown in from the US and Europe. And it's kind of like the biggest, most complex event I'd ever been involved with producing. Usually it was like one night, like there's a five DJs or 10 DJs, and it's very simple from a structural point of view. And suddenly it's like this is 4 days, multiple venues, 50 to 60 different artists, having to fly them in from different parts of the world, coordinate like maybe specialized equipment they need that you have to source from like a supplier in Mexico where like the venue didn't have it in house. All of the like hotel logistics, transportation from the airport, very, very complicated. International marketing to get people to actually buy tickets and fly from the US and Canada or, to the event as attendees. And when you kind of do that, you realize that there are 50 email threads. And why am I seeing attachments flying around that are unstructured? Why is every contract in a different format? Why is there like manual back and forth about like flight choices and artwork approvals? And now 10 agents have to sign off on the same piece of artwork, and now they're fighting because they want their artist above another one, and these workflows are manual, and you kind of realize that like this is a really complex problem.
Yeah, sure. Like you already mentioned so many things, and I'm like, this is really complex. Like this is not something that someone can actually do without even knowing how to do. Like it would be super overwhelmed. Like,
Exactly. And I
yeah,
found that still doing Ticket Fairy like full time, even though I kind of got an idea of what there was needed, what needed to happen. It was kind of like, okay, well, if you don't get things done on time, if flights get booked late, the flight cost increases by 50%. If hotels don't get locked in time, you lose the room allocations. Like artist announcements have to happen at the same time. So you have to get all the agents to sign off to meet your deadline for announcing the event. And if the two agents are arguing about the positioning of the talent, your announcement gets delayed by a month, and then the revenue gets delayed by a month because you haven't announced.
yeah,
And like being busy running Ticket Fairy, everything got delayed and delayed and delayed, not because I'm not capable of doing it, but because there's so much that you need to do and so much you need to coordinate that, like, you need a level of automation. You need maybe a team 10 times the size that you have the resources for to keep track of everything that is needed. You need to project manage the whole thing. What if a flight doesn't get booked in time and now that flight's no longer available, and you have to pay business class flights for the artist, or you have to change the day they perform on, or suddenly your biggest performer has to pull out because now it's no longer feasible for them to perform, and you now don't have an event that's as attractive as it was before.
how we go to some events sometimes and they say, yeah, this artist canceled or we don't have this anymore. And you finally like, you also as a customer, you don't feel the same trust, I would say, into the system sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. And then
It-
then it, yeah, negatively affects your future events as well, right?
yeah,
Because now people are like, well, I'm not going to buy just in case, and like there's knock-on effects to reputation everywhere, and that happens in general in the industry. It's like, well, if you now can't pay a specific artist,
mhm.
then that booking agent probably represents another 30 of those artists. And if you don't pay one invoice, you no longer have the ability to book anyone on that roster. And if you do it too many times, the reputation is that you can't pay your talent. So then people don't ever even agree to perform for you.
Yeah, it affects you because it's also part of your brand. Like I see it like this, like you build trust for your brand. It's part of you and how people see your brand and the festivals that you're putting on.
Yeah.
So from everything that you listed before, all the things and all the automations and optimizations that someone needs to do, they go into a lot of spaces, as we would say, like logistics, hotels, flights, CRM, as you mentioned before. So would it be like a good description, as we would say, that maybe Ticket Ferry mixes a little bit of everything? It's a little bit of an AI platform and marketing automation. Maybe we have also some financial technology. Could we say like it has also some fintech side
It's
into it?
yeah, yeah. It's there's some very heavy fintech elements, especially the new platform we're releasing in the new year. It's
Mm-hmm.
super fintech oriented, and we've also just launched a capital program where the event organizers can take funding for the deposits for the talent based on previous revenue. So it's not just like it's not VC. It's not like, hey, I have an idea, can you fund it? But
Yeah,
if someone's doing regular events and they have proven revenue, then we can actually give them funding to pay the deposits way earlier than the ticket sales start, which gives them the head start way like much sooner, and they can announce much sooner.
that's I think great. Like you're launching a new sector, new part of your product. So maybe can you walk us through a bit of the before and after story and where the data or AI could be a problem into running maybe a risky event compared to like a more profitable one. I don't know if you had any instances before, maybe um it was a profitable event, but
There's a few things on the AI side. So like when you think about what's needed, there's kind of the standard co-pilots of like, hey, the event organizer can use the platform and the event organizer can action things within the chat. That is something that you've got to be very careful with, right? Like you have to have security guardrails. You have to make sure that type of requests you can service are not just anything. And then you also have
exactly.
to make sure that like the agent is specifically authenticated just to that user that's logged in, because you want to make sure that they can't access other people's data. So like we've spent a lot of time doing that, making sure that that's safe. But then you've got like, maybe there's 100,000 person event that needs very, very large scale customer service. So
Mhm.
then we can build agents on like both voice agents and text agents for event information, order management, knowledge bases, and natural language queries. So like that's important. So
Mhm.
that's another part of the new platform. And then the other side of it is like, all those logistics that we mentioned earlier, like, how do you use AI to like then pull in those contracts, pull in those, like read all those emails, figure out what the action points are. So that's another heavy focus. So like there's quite a lot.
It's also like a personal assistant for the sort of producer, as someone would say. It keeps track of everything.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and that's the idea. Even when we first started the company, it was very much like, what is this company? It's not a ticketing platform. So initially, it's a revenue boosting platform. Then it
Mm-hmm.
became CRM. Then it became more on the ops and operations side. Now it's going like into like lending and fintech. And then on the AI side of it, it's like, well, what is workforce leverage? Can we give the smaller events companies the same personnel resources as the big events companies without
Mm-hmm.
needing to bring in 100 full-time salaries?
Yeah, that's right. Also, maybe you can describe a little bit since you mentioned that you're launching in 2026. Do you want maybe to, if any of them is a producer of an event, how this is different, what you're launching?
The way we think about this is, can you run your events business on TicketFairy without needing anything else?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, so you don't need Google Sheets anymore. You don't need a separate task management system. You're not manually transcribing documents into spreadsheets and just everything sits in shared folders. Even if you have an external marketing team, you can give the external marketing team the tools inside the platform to make sure that their campaigns are converting correctly, and they're analyzing that, like, where conversions are happening. All of that stuff is really important. So from our perspective, it's like, well, even if we don't have everything right now, the goal is to have everything, because what you want is everyone in your team to use the same system, one source of truth, data being consistent, workflows, like automation of workflows between the different layers and modules, and to not need to have to go to anything else. You have similar platforms for tech companies and corporations, but it doesn't exist in events.
Yeah. I think it's like the one-stop shop for events, as someone would say it.
Yeah, for sure.
I like the fact that you're trying to build something like this that has a little bit of everything, because I work in software and sometimes I see that maybe some of our clients have data in this database here, and then there's an Excel spreadsheet here, and there's some
Yeah.
sort of PowerPoint that has data on top of it somehow. So it's a little bit of a mess to keep track of everything. So I really like that you're building this for events. Everyone is in a really big hype of AI at the moment. Maybe you have also seen that. So what would be an example that you have used AI and you said, okay, wow, that we can do this. But also, what's an example that it totally failed you in the event coordination space?
People might think that AI is like a magic solution to everything. The models have only really become decent enough in the last month, I would say.
Yeah, I would agree.
Just the last month. And if you think that, and unfortunately, because like we're a very tech heavy company, when we did the Y Combinator program in 2015, and Sam Altman was running it back then, and so YC companies were able to get early access to GPT in 2020. And so like
Wow.
I've seen the early stages of it. On my LinkedIn, there's a LinkedIn post from 2020 with a pure AI generated article on how to market an event.
Wow.
And it's kind of funny looking back on it, because it was like way before anyone even knew the technology existed. And I think it was before the first public release of ChatGPT. I think it was like a API preview
Beta.
only, it was like very, very early. And so in our roadmap, even 3 or 4 years ago, we had a conversational dashboard in the roadmap, which was basically essentially a AI copilot, chat based. And even knowing that technology existed back then, we didn't bring it to market because the models weren't good enough, or the toolkits weren't good enough, or there weren't the right agent frameworks and things like that. So like, but then for example, we've been using ChatGPT API for programmatic SEO for like 3 or 4 years now. It would make loads of mistakes. It would reference events that had never happened. It would reference things that were absolutely not accurate in the content.
That's
Lots
right.
of hallucination.
Yeah, I find this problem, like for me, being solved mostly with Perplexity. I like how they have built the product to basically use different models, but then next to your sentence, you get the source. So if the source is actually completely mismatched from the answer that you are getting, you can detect a bit easier the hallucination of the model.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
the thing is, the web search capabilities of the models didn't exist again until recently.
Yeah,
Perplexity
sure.
was one of the first ones to do that. The OpenAI and Anthropic models didn't have web search. And so you'd find that like knowledge cutoff dates were a real problem, because knowledge cutoff on any new model was like a year and a half old, and maybe 2 years old.
Yeah,
And
that's
so
right.
then when you're trying to reference something that's relevant, you can't do it because it just didn't have the information. Very recently, you have the deep, for example, the deep research APIs that like say OpenAI has, and that very heavily scours external sources and aggregates those, and the token usage is not necessarily the output or the input of your prompt and of the resulting content. The token usage is all the input of the articles that it's ingesting on the research side, right? That's where the usage is mostly like as accurate as you can get it. But at the same time, if AI is using AI as a reference, and that AI article was half hallucination, then you have a problem.
Yeah, that's true.
Right? Like I was saying, then it's kind of like the equivalent of inbreeding. You have like gene mutations and things like that, which
I'd say you're going into like a whole loophole because you're just like rolling around.
it's the
The
equivalent of
one,
cousins marrying cousins, and
yeah,
the resulting
One thing that as a student, that I used to go more to events and festivals, and I think most people hate is maybe scalping and resale fraud because a lot of
Yeah.
scams are on there, and most people assume that this is just part of how the world works. For example, that this might happen to them. What's the most intuitive thing you have learned about tackling this sort of scalpers that use tech or analytics or blockchain in order to scam people?
As a company, we're very opinionated on how things should be and how things should not be.
Mm-hmm.
So in 2014, we launched a safe resale platform inside TicketFairy where force names on every ticket. So they'd have to be the tickets have to be identified individually. And then if you wanted to transfer it, you could log into your account, click sell on an individual ticket and say, hey, here's someone I want to sell it to. Or if the event was sold out and had a wait list, you could say, match me with someone who's looking for a ticket, and we would handle that side of it. A scenario, you would never have someone directly sending a bank transfer to the other person. The buyer of the ticket would get an invitation from us. They would pay with their card like they were buying a primary ticket. When that credit card transaction went through, we would notify the person who's selling that someone's purchased their ticket. We would refund their card. We would cancel their QR code. We would issue a new one to the new buyer. And it was completely clean with zero fraud and no ability to sell above face value or make a profit in a bad way with a black market type sale.
Yeah.
And you would know for a fact you were buying a real ticket because it was coming from the primary platform, which was
Mm-hmm.
us. There was no direct money transfer between buyer and seller because we kind of acted as escrow, and that worked and still works really, really well. We got asked in 2017, 2018, multiple times by different crypto blockchain VCs, hey, will you launch a token? I was speaking on panels about blockchain and music and events at different blockchain conferences across 2017, 18, 19 about the application of the technology. And I was like, well, this stuff is not going to become mainstream until the UX problem is fixed and it's transparent. Like, you don't need to know the protocol layer of the app you're using. Like, you
Mm-hmm.
don't need to know that the protocol you're using for normal web is HTTP and TCP, HTTPS and TCP/IP. You don't need to know the transport
Yeah.
layers and the protocols, right? You just don't.
Mm-hmm.
What you need to know is, why am I like, is the UX, do I understand the UX, and what's the benefit of it working this way? Blockchain ticketing is a similar thing where, like, it kind of got brought in as, well, you can do peer-to-peer resales, and then there can be smart contracts on the profit that goes back to the artist or the event organizer, and there can be rules on, like, what can be the resale rules and things like that. But I'm going to say this and be quite controversial, that blockchain ticketing, tokenized tickets, and resale is a bit of a gimmick because you can solve it better centralized. The only time it needs to be decentralized is if you're willing for other platforms to list that inventory and
Mm-hmm.
you want to trust
Mm-hmm.
the third party platform. Blockchain's not needed unless you need to trust the third party.
Okay. Yeah. If you're not getting any benefit out of it, then
Yeah, exactly. And it's not reliable. It's open to a lot more fraud than centralized systems.
because we're trusting here the third-party platform that these will actually follow the rules, right?
Exactly,
It's not part of
exactly.
your system.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you're basically like trusting a third party website that's listed that event that allows you to do this, is actually, it's using the same smart contract that is the real smart contract. Like, then how do you verify that it's the real smart contract? Unless you go to the original place, in which case you could
That's
just
right.
do it as a centralized resale in the first place, right? So it's like, and I say this having multiple blockchain investors on our cap table. Like, we have, like, some of our investors are like the inventor of the stablecoin and chairman of the Bitcoin Foundation. Like, we have blockchain investors, but the application of the technology needs to be correct. So, like, we only implemented blockchain layers in 2021, not for tokenized ticketing, but for like unlocking access to events with tokens. So we could then like go into your wallet and say, do you have this token? And if so, that's the key to unlocking access to an event. Now that's a good
Wow.
use.
Yeah. And actually, this is not something that a lot of people know. Most people actually think that blockchain is only crypto.
Right.
Yeah, they don't even know that there's like a whole new tech that's called blockchain, and it's not used only for crypto or NFTs that they were booming in 2021.
Yeah, and the way we implemented it is that you were able to use an NFT that you owned to unlock
Mm-hmm.
access to an event for that community, or
Mm-hmm.
that DJ had his own NFT, like Steve Aoki. Steve Aoki had his own NFT collection,
Yeah.
and you could get free access to his events by using your Steve Aoki NFT. And we actually
Wow.
powered that. So every Steve Aoki event in the world had a TicketFairy
Mhm.
landing page where you could connect your wallet, prove you had one of his tokens, and then we would be able to get you onto the guest list. And that we powered that for Steve Aoki.
Wow. So,
And that's a good use case of blockchain.
yeah.
The other use case of blockchain is proof of attendance tokens. So being able to show that like you did attend an event, and once you attended the event, that token sits in your wallet as a verifiable way of showing that you were in the room. And
Hmm.
then that token could then be used post-event to maybe unlock merchandise deals, or a relevant brand wants to give you an offer only if you were at that concert, or a band that performed at a festival is going on tour and they don't have a relationship with the festival, but they have a relationship, but you went to see them as a fan, right? So it can be like, well, if you saw us at Coachella
Hmm.
and you can prove that you were there, then you get access to our pre-sale for our upcoming tour. That's a really good use case.
Yeah. I didn't even know that you could do that.
You can
Like
do all
before
of
I
that.
had this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we've put all of those things into the platform, so we can do that. But we don't tokenize the tickets because I don't believe that's the right way to do it.
Yeah, and I think as a founder, you should have an opinion of how you want your product to be. Like you have a vision for this, you want to make it the one-stop shop, and you want also to have a trust in the platform. On my side, I think it's actually pretty ethical to do it like this.
Yeah, we're very opinionated as a company. Like when we got asked if we would launch a token in 2017, 18, 19,
Mm-hmm.
we had VCs offering, like I had one VC offer $500,000 to cover SEC compliance legal fees if we would launch a token. And we still said no,
Wow.
right? Like you
Yeah.
need to say no at the right times. Our investors are the founders of Twitch, YouTube, Reddit. Like we have a very high caliber of investors. If we launched a token that was just designed to like rip off the market and do a pump and dump, like we're not willing to do that.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. Also, we have heard of a lot of things that happen like this. Like, I think it's just that people start out thinking that more of a scammy way to do tech, just
They do
remove
now
vulnerability.
because they were the pump and dump tokens, right? Like
Yeah, exactly.
the technology behind blockchain is very idealistic, but the people that have exploited it in a way to rip off general public and retail and like, you know, raised a bunch of money and then just like, oh, sorry, the project failed. Sorry, it's like now the token is
Yeah.
worth nothing. What that does is it really creates a black mark on the technology itself.
Yeah, that's right. What you do is a way of you protecting also the organizers, that they are trusting you. They are going into your platform. Since you're not allowing to tokenize the tickets, you cannot say for a scammy way around them. The organizers know that, okay, I do have this sort of attendance, for example, that I'm expecting. This event will actually go like this.
Oh yeah, because the
Uh,
worst thing is to model your bar sales and your staffing on fake sales, right? Like that's bad.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Let's say that someone is a total beginner in your platform. Like they have organized events before, but they didn't know you before this podcast and they just found out about TicketFairy. Going into your platform, what would you say was one habit in general that you would like to tell them to do? Like maybe of,
Hmm.
and maybe how to use like AI, how to use AI inside your platform.
So a lot of the things that we do, they don't necessarily change existing behavior. So the way we kind of set it up so
Mm-hmm.
far is that in the same way that you would make an event listing on Eventbrite, like you put in your
Sure.
dates, your venue, your pricing,
Mm-hmm.
that's all we actually require you to do. And then the
Mm-hmm.
system turns on a bunch of automation itself and makes kind of sensible decisions without you actually having to change your behavior. So the
Oh,
gamification of sharing gets turned on automatically, the resale gets turned on automatically, the wait list gets turned on automatically. Like, you know, there's things that we kind of have decided like these are the right things to turn on. And then if you want to tweak them kind of in an expert mode, you can do that. And then we also allow you to, you know, book onboarding and consultancy calls with the team. If you're trying to like achieve something that's a little bit more complex, then we're not software only. We are actually like very hands-on, white glove, like here are your business goals and here's how we work backwards to achieve them with the tech. So
yeah, that's great.
that's important.
Yeah, because you have the big goal and then you're breaking into smaller parts for
Yeah.
them.
Yeah, so we kind of work almost like on a semi consultancy basis where we're looking at like every bottleneck you have and thinking, okay, well, is
Mhm.
there something in the platform that we can use to solve that? And the AI stuff that launches in the new year is very much like, well, if you were going to book a call with one of the team, now the agent knows all of that knowledge. And so if it's within that realm of things you want to achieve, then it's going to be able to do that for you and be available to you 24 hours a day, which is
Yeah.
also very helpful.
Yeah, that's right. That's pretty great that someone can actually have the sort of assistance in that platform that you guys have built. I would like to thank you for your time. This was
Yeah, thank you very
an
much.
amazing conversation. I don't know if you have anything else to say before we close up everything. Maybe you can also tell people where to find you. If you want, you can also share about next launch, if you want people to find you at launch day as well.
So we're actually doing a new platform launch within the next few days, which is a very it's kind of like a much bigger like UI UX refresh, which makes the platform a lot more intuitive to use. And then there's a bigger release in Q1. But I would say that it's at TicketFairy everywhere. Mine is at Rit Locus, RATLOCUS. I guess like if you are someone who is like you say trying to get to the next level of of their events, even if it's just a case of like having a conversation with us trying to figure out like potential strategy, even if you don't end up using the platform, there's probably some cool things you can take away from the conversation. And the website lets you book a call with any of the team, either on the kind of product landing page or
Mhm.
once you're signed up, there's a button to book an onboarding call and like think about like, what how you can get the most out of the platform. So it's really easy to get in touch with us.
That's great. Thank you very much. It was an exciting conversation, and I really learned a lot of things that I didn't know that you can do,
That's
especially with the
good.
blockchain.
That's good. I'm a bit like when I speak on panels, I try to be the voice of reason, and I'm happy to go against the grain against the other panelists if it's something that like is important.
No problem, no problem. I appreciate your honesty and thank you for the time.
This was another episode of Tech by Fairy. You can find us in all podcasting platforms like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and more. Follow and subscribe in order to keep up with tech and AI videos. See you soon.